How's everybody feeling today? Yeah. Now I've got a little more energy. That guy gave us good knowledge. My knowledge might not be as good as his. Hopefully it makes you more money, but you're going to be energized because that's what I'm about. Everything to me is about energy, and what you guys do every day, you got to get on the grind. You got to have energy. You can't let things hold you back. You got people saying it's a commission-only job. You got to sell a house. You're putting in this work. What if they don't buy? What if they choose you not to sell? You got all this noise in your head, which is similar to some of the noise that I've had in my career, because I'm a big salesperson. I believe in commission only. I like to not be capped in and boxed in what I can make, and I believe in making sure other people have that opportunity as well. So what I want to talk about is a little bit, I have 8 principles that are in the book that really kind of give you a no excuses life, right? I'm kind of real and raw. Like she said, I didn't finish traditional high school. I drop F-bombs here and there. I probably won't hear, but in the book you'll see it. The podcast, you'll hear it. It happens. I try to keep it real. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. But, really, chapter 1, and one of the things I like to follow through every day I wake up is make your own map. And what does that really mean? And that means, to me, that we all have these struggles in life where we have to make a decision every single day, some small, some big. And a little bit about my history is one of the times is I had a kid when I was 18, but I was 17 when I knocked up my girlfriend. Her family did not like me. They used to make fun of me that we lived in a trailer and like, oh, they could stick his feet out and move his house. And I was like, can we really do that? Like, is that legit? So like this is how this went down. And she came from a little bit more money than obviously I had. And she was pregnant. She was 16, getting ready to be 17. Okay, I've got 4 kids now. I understand why someone would be pissed. But, Elizabeth was going to have our daughter Hannah. And we were on and off. We were kids, right? And her family did not like me or my family. It was like a Romeo and Juliet type story. But the day that she was going to get induced, right? I was just turned 18 years old. I was a couple months into being 18. I worked at a company called First Union at the time, before it was Wachovia, over at CIC on Harris Boulevard. People know that. I used to do sales there. People remember that, right? I shouldn't have had that job. That's a whole nother story. You can find out in the book. Like I changed my resume, said I had all these credentials, but I was their top salesperson, right? I was their top salesperson, so they weren't going to let me go when they figured out I didn't have the experience. However, I left that job to go to the hospital, University Hospital, and to see my daughter born. I had this Polaroid camera. We all remember what Polaroid camera's like. You take pictures, you got the cool little, shake it and look at it. So me and my buddy, we pulled up there. When we pulled up, I saw her mom and her sister running inside. And I'm like, oh. So we pull up, I walk up, I'm like, hey, is Elizabeth Stalvey here? Nurse says no. Said she's not. I just saw her family. Like, my daughter's getting ready to be born. She's here. She's not here. Actually, she's here, but she's under an alias name, and they required that you don't come up. I was like, well, my daughter's being born. I got to take a picture. Like, I'm confused. She said, I don't know what to tell you, Mr. Waller, but this is back in '98 when you can actually go see the babies in the nursery. You can't do that now, right? It's weird. But back then it was okay. And so I was like, yeah, well, she said, you can go up there and take pictures, but you won't see the names. So here I am with a buddy of mine taking pictures of 9 different girls in the nursery, not knowing which one's mine, like little babies. It hit me like I was broken. I was upset. I was emotional. I had this really cool job, but I was still a kid. I was still letting people dictate my life. And so I went home, back to the trailer park, and was very upset with my buddy and my mom. We were playing spades. That's what people in the trailer park like to do, is play spades. And that's right. And I remember sitting there saying, this is BS. I'm not going to let her family control what's happening. And the backlog of a part of that story that I didn't mention is her mom was trying to give our daughter up for adoption or call social services. She did not want her to have the baby. She said, you guys are absolutely too young. Up to the day that she had Hannah, she had social services involved to try to take the child. That's how that went down. So here I am nervous. My kid's going to be given up for adoption or be turned into social services. So I elected the next day to kind of take things into my own hands. I had a car. It was worth about $2,500. I went and got a loan on it. And I took that money and I hired an attorney. And I sued for joint custody. So that day, 2 things happened. 1, my daughter was born. And 2, it was the rebirth of how I thought of things. I wasn't going to let her mom, my mom, outside world, people at high school, people telling me I can't and I won't dictate anything else anymore. I was going to make my own map. I was going to control my own destiny because I didn't want to have those regrets. I didn't want to have to look back and say, why didn't I do that? Why didn't I do that? So I took control. Now, I got to see Hannah when she was 7 days old. She's my wife now. So we've got 4 kids, right? So we've stayed together since then. And her mom and us are cool, right? So her mom and me are cool. Took some time. But, she came and said her mom left that day and called social services and they didn't show up. And she called her grandma after she had Hannah and she moved in with her grandma. So her mom really wasn't the best mom in the world. She's a better grandma than she was a mom. That kind of catapulted my thought process. And I was in high school where I lived in a trailer park. I had fake Tommy Hilfigers. We wwere joking around. My guy here was like, is that a fake Rolex? Because you have to wind it. I said, no, when you don't have it in the thing, you have to wind it. It just sits. I said, he was making fun of me because I used to wear fake Tommy Hilfigers in school. And people would make fun of me. It's like, that a real Tommy Hilfiger? I think. No, it's not. Okay. I had this whole mindset that I was getting judged, and I know everybody here can respect that, on things you can't control. You can't control what you look like. You can't control your race. You can't control how much money you have in your family. You can't control if you're tall or short. You can't control certain things. And I was tired of being judged on things I couldn't control. I couldn't control my parents didn't finish high school. We lived in a trailer park. I mean, to me, that was okay. I couldn't control that her family didn't want me to be in my daughter's life. I couldn't control, I controlled that I was going to be, but I couldn't control what they wanted. I couldn't control, what we had at the dinner table or what I got for Christmas. But what I could dictate is what I did to make a difference, right? There was no excuses with me. There was no pointing the finger. This is holding me back. That didn't work for me. So I kind of changed that mindset to make your own map. I ran into that same thought process many times in my business, to where when I opened up, I went from First Union to AT&T to Verizon Wireless, and I wouldn't get promoted. I was sitting there many, many times, top salesperson at Verizon Wireless, back when cell phones first came out, like 01 to 04, when not everybody had it, and I was selling BlackBerry PDA servers over here to Charlotte Pipe and Foundry. I was a whole boardroom of guys, and I'm like, hey, this is the future. They're like, no, this is the future. But I realized that I wasn't going to get promoted because of my age, because of my education. My manager's he was a mentor of my friend. He's like, I can't. You don't have the college education. You're still like 22 years old. I can't promote you to be a manager over 30 people. I'm like, well, I'm working circles around everybody. I mean, it was me, and then it was like way down here was second place. I was winning every award. So I got frustrated. I felt handcuffed. I had to do something to open my own business. I opened up a home security business. I told my manager, I said, look, you're going to get 70% of me. The other 30% is going to build this company up from the ground. It's my first alarm company. I said, so you got to either be good with 70% or I got to be out. He said, I'll take 70%, because that was number one. So he took the 70%. 8 months later, I built it up where I could quit that job. Yeah, fast forward. Thank you. Yeah, fast forward, right? I've used that philosophy to make my own map. Every time I struggle and I know there's a decision to make, I think of where I came from and where I am now, right? So, the next one is, take the stairs. There's no elevator in life. And, that's cliche, but it's really not. There's been times that I feel like I fail. I struggle. I fail. I struggle. I'm not getting it right. I'm not making money. The first time I opened the home security business, I didn't get paid for almost the 8 or 9 months till I could leave the cell phone business. Power Home Solar, for 22 months I didn't make a check. I sold my house on the lake. We lived up at Lake Norman in the Point. I was like, honey, I haven't been paid in almost 2 years. Everything we made in home security is back in the business. I'm gonna have to sell this house. We're gonna have to downsize, and I've put it all in the business. I got the stink eye from her. The kids were bothered and pissed off, like, Dad, why are we moving? We're in the Point. This is cool, blah, blah, right? Guys, we have to do what we got to do. I'm all in. I'm betting on myself. I'm all in, right? What I learned in the first company I opened, and then the second company I was a part of growing, I learned on how to overcome certain objections, how to deal with adversity, how to build a really good culture, how to know never to quit, right? Because there was a time in December 2015, I opened the company in January 2015, where, this was right before I decided to sell the house, no paycheck. Wife's upset. We're at a Disney trip I probably shouldn't have been at, right? We booked it early. We're sitting there. I'm emotional. And I'm like, I'm going to have to close. We have 35 employees. I'm going to have to shut the doors. Like, we're not making money. I'm not even getting a paycheck. And my wife's like, well, just pray about it. And I prayed about it. And I woke up the next morning. I'm like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just gonna go in and fire 80% of the people. If I feel like they're not giving 110% effort, they're out. And I'm gonna go in and start doing things again like I did in the home security business myself. I'm gonna make the phone calls, I'm gonna run the appointments, I'm gonna fill out the permitting, I'm gonna fill out the interconnection, I'm gonna help with the design. Whatever I've gotta do, I'm gonna do. And to me, that was taking the steps, because I went in, I fired 80% of our staff, and I started building it up. And about 8 months later, I started getting a paycheck, and we started being profitable. We added more employees, but we finished year 2. So year 1, we did $3 million in sales, lost money, had 35 employees. Year 2, we did $14 million in sales, lost money, but I started getting a paycheck in November, which was exciting, because the wife was like, "You're actually getting a paycheck?" I'm like, "Yeah, high five," right? Year 3 really got interesting. We did $40 million in sales. We expanded into new markets. We ended up with about almost 250 employees. We were profitable. Year 4, we did $105 million in sales, 500 employees. Year 5, we did $350 million in sales. No, $185 million in sales, X amount of employees. We just finished last year with 390. No, it's all over the board. We finished last year with 590. The year before was 390. But we've only been doing it 7 years. We have 2,200 employees. But how did I get there? How did little old me get there? I took the stairs. I learned from every mistake I made. Every failure I had, I took as knowledge. As our guy Morgan Freeman would say, I failed forward. I paid attention to the struggles I had, and I tried to learn something from it. I don't like to use the word failure because it makes you feel bad. I like to use the word opportunity. I had this opportunity. I get the results I wanted, but it was an opportunity where I got something from it, and I applied that to the business. I created this 80-20 rule. When I first did it, I fired 80% and kept 20%. But now every single month, every one of our directors, we've got 30 directors, are accountable for firing or putting on a PIP plan. Everybody's eyes got big. 20% of our staff every month. But I'm a big believer, you run a business, you run an organization like you run a sports team. If they can't put up points, and your bench not strong, you're going to lose. And this isn't a, hey, we're trying to be friends business. This is a, how do we get to the next level so 2,200 employees can put food on their table, so 32,000 customers can have solar and own their power. That's, to me, what it's about. So we don't have time. We put KPIs in place, and we have accountability. And that's part of the things I learned on taking the stairs and not taking the elevator. Because had I just been successful early, I wouldn't have learned those things. I couldn't overcome. I couldn't be as tough as I was to deal with some of the things you got to deal with running a company. Don't be held hostage is a big deal because, you know, I talked a little bit about my wife's mom, which I thought she was the devil for a long time. My family wasn't innocent. You know, I grew up with some abuse, not a lot, but when you look back, you're like, damn, I'd never do that to my kid, right? But it was tough because when I got married, my parents had this thought process that I was still their kid and that was my first family, and my wife and kids were kind of my second family. I'm sure people can relate. It's like, no, you're going to listen to me, son, and Liz, you need to feed them this way. You need to do this way. That was the stuff that I got early on in the marriage, 2 kids, 3 kids, 4 kids. Like, it started to become a pattern where I was in the middle of my wife and my mom all the time. I was being held hostage to try to make each one of them happy. And I was confused. It was until I was, I'm 42 now, but it was until I was 30 till I really figured things out that, oh, that's not how this works. And my wife back then, so think of 12 years ago, sanitizer was not cool. Now it's cool. You got masks, sanitizer, people are wearing like gloves on their heads. I mean, you got all kinds of crazy stuff, right? Back then, 12, 14 years ago, like people didn't even have sanitizer. Like it was not heard of, you just wash your hands. So when my parents would come over, it was, hey, can you take your shoes off and put some sanitizer on? What, are we dirty? Why do we have to do that? Now, it seems like that's normal now, but think of 12 years ago, that wasn't normal. Grocery stores didn't have anything, there was no sanitizer. So my wife, like, it was cool when it wasn't cool for her. I would feel bad. I felt like I was disappointing my parents because my wife was so strict on her rules, which those are our rules, and I kept playing in the middle. And I struggled with it. And there was an argument that my wife, when she was pregnant with our 4th child, and my mom had an argument. I was in Nevada. I don't like to say Vegas. Nevada always sounds a little better. So I was in Nevada with some business associates, and I came back, And my wife said, she called me from work. She was at the office. She said, my mom shoulder checked her while she was pregnant. Like they argued about something, she shoulder checked her, pop. And my wife was very upset and distraught. My dad started yelling at her. My parents worked for me at the time. It was my first business, alarm company. My dad retired from AT&T, got a BS package, wasn't making money. I hired him, he grew in the business, and I had him manage some things. But it was hard because here's my dad working for me. I've got to put on a I'm your boss hat and then take it off. Oh, you're my dad hat. Like those are more things you learn as you go. But I got a phone call from him and my wife was all fired up. I'm done. So my dad called me around his mouth. I said, we're done. We're done. So we didn't have a relationship with them for a year. They didn't get to see my son be born. My mom would send me letters or call or text and say, I'm the grandparent of those grandkids. I'm allowed to see them. The truth is a relationship doesn't entitle you to anything because you're blood related. That means nothing. What a relationship is mutual. I give, you give. I take, you take. It's not I take. And a lot of people are held hostage in a relationship, whether it be a family member, whether it be a spouse, whether it be someone that you care about, whether it be someone you work with. We feel held hostage. Oh, I have kids, I can't leave. Oh, it's my mom, I have to deal with this. Oh, it's my best friend, I feel bad. Oh, it's my little brother. Like, I had to learn that that's not how this works. And all of us get stuck being held hostage somehow, some way in our lives with people. And I tried to change my mindset that year. So I didn't really grow up ever going to church. And I'm not going to promote like a ton of church or anything, but I didn't grow up going to church. But when I didn't have my family around, we just had my son was born, things were bothering me. And so my wife was like, well, let's try to go to church. And we went to every church you can think of. We went to a Mormon church. We went to a Catholic church. We went to a Baptist. We went to all of them. And I can say that because we're in North Carolina. When I bring stuff up in other states, they can't relate. But, I tried all the churches. And I like the Catholic church. My wife grew up Catholic. She was like, man, this is structured. This is fun. She's like, it's not fun. I'm like, well, it seems fun. Nope. I'm like, okay. I thought it was fun. And I thought it was cool if you screw up on the weekend, you'd come back in and say, hey, forgive me for my sins. I'm good, right? Like, I thought that was cool. She didn't. So I liked the Mormon church. And people look at me weird. I'm like, dude, I really liked it. They were structured. I didn't like the second part of the book. No offense if you're Mormon. I've got a ton of Mormon friends. But that part kind of threw me off. And I'm like, okay, I like everything until you said the John Smith thing. Now I'm a little confused. Time out. But I was in those churches and I love it. And I've got best friends that are Mormon because I grew up in Arizona. Those are my people, right? It's just everybody has their own belief, and that's okay. So we ended up going to Grace Covenant up in 73 towards Huntersville. And, we knew Stephen Furtick and his team when he was first building his church, right, Elevation, which I love. That's the only person I can listen to that gets me inspired and motivated, by the way, just energy. But when he wasn't really doing things, we went up there to Grace Covenant. And I remember sitting there going a few times and seeing what these other people had that I didn't. And I'm not one that's ever negative in jealousy. I'm one that's positive, like in envy, like, wow, man, that's really cool that they got that. How do I get that? That's exciting, right? I get excited about seeing people successful or doing great things. I saw these men having control of their families and their kids and their wives in the church praying over them, and I didn't have that. And I lacked that. And here I was, I didn't have my parents anymore. I wasn't talking to them. Therefore, my siblings were split. One sided with my parents, one sided with me. It was chaos, and I needed some guidance. So I started going to church, and we decided to get baptized, become born-again Christians in 2011. And then we renewed our vows and had a huge wedding, because I gave her a Mickey Mouse wedding. Like, it was like, hey, pick me up, let's go to the Justice of Peace. Okay, and we went and did that after Hannah was born. She was 2, true story. So she never asked for a big wedding, so I gave her a big wedding, 10 years later. But what I learned by putting forth the boundaries with my parents is eventually they came around. And eventually they respected that if they can't respect the entire circle, they're not going to be part of the circle. That my life is my wife and my kids first, not them. They're second. And they got it. And they're way better grandparents than they've ever been. And I've got a fantastic relationship with them. But it was 13 hard months of me not being held hostage. And that's on a personal level. On a business level, there's so many times that maybe you're running your agency or your team and you've got reps that hold you hostage because they're a top performer and they're like, pay me this, give me this, or I'll go somewhere else. And we're all held hostage of things like this. You have to build systems in place to not be held hostage. In our business right now, Because the way we built Power Home Solar, we were held hostage so many times in the alarm company. I don't care if you're the top rep or the top 2 reps or the top 3 reps. If you do any kind of shady stuff or integrity, you're fired. And guess what? Those 3 just became number 1, 2, and 3, and we don't miss a beat because we built systems where everybody is a cog on a wheel, on a truck, on the road. Nobody is bigger than anybody. The person that cleans the bathrooms is just as equal as the person doing the accounting. We treat our business that way and our culture that way, and it's allowed the systems to really change and never be held hostage as we grow, which is important. When you're growing a business or you're growing a brand, you have to not be held hostage. It is your name, it is your company on the line. And you've always got to protect the brand every single time.